Sometimes, life changes in a single heartbeat. For Grace Turner, that heartbeat came on a rainy night in Portland, Oregon. The night she lost everything and found the courage to rebuild it all. Grace was 23, bright, warm, and unstoppable. She was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, volunteered at local hospitals, and dreamed of becoming a nurse, someone who heals people. Every morning, she rode her bicycle through downtown in Portland, rain or shine, to the small community clinic, where she interned. She was known by her laughter, always helping, always caring. Her best friend, Emma Clark, would often tease her, "Grace, you try to fix people like it's your full-time job." And Grace would just smile and reply, "Maybe that's what I was born to do." But life has a way of testing the kindest souls. It was late May. Grace had just finished her nursing certification exams. To celebrate her classmates threw a small pizza party, music, and a little too much champagne. Now, Grace wasn't a heavy drinker. She had one glass, maybe two. Outside, rain began to fall gently at first, then heavier. She was supposed to take a cab home, but her phone battery died. "It's only a 15 minutes drive," she whispered to herself. "I'll be fine." She wasn't. On the highway just outside Portland, the streets shimmered with rain. Grace's headlights blurred through the mist, her hands tightening on the steering wheel. At that exact moment, a man named Peter Madsen, a 42-year-old Danish musician, was crossing the intersection after a late gig. In a split second, the world stopped. A flash of light, the sound of shattering glass, and then silence. Grace's car skidded to the side of the road. She stumbled out, shaking, staring at what she'd done. Her heart screamed, "Please, no." When the police arrived, she didn't resist. She didn't run. She just kept whispering, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." The case became local news within hours. A young nursing student, a beloved musician and father of two. In court, Grace stood trembling before the judge. She didn't make any excuses. She simply said, "I was careless, and I will live with that for the rest of my life." Peter's wife, Anna Madsen, sat quietly in the front row, holding her children. Her face was pale, but calm. Grace couldn't bring herself to look her in the eyes. The verdict, 4 years in state prison. Grace's parents cried silently as the guards led her away. How do you rebuild a life you've destroyed? That question echoed in her mind for months. Prison was cold, not just in temperature, but in spirit. The walls smelled of regret, the halls filled with broken dreams. Grace kept to herself, too ashamed to speak. Her cellmate, an older woman named Tanya, once asked, "What's your story, sweetheart?" Grace replied softly, "I took a life, and I don't deserve another." But life, as always, had other plans. One morning, the prison nurse, Marjorie, called for help. An inmate had collapsed. Without thinking, Grace rushed forward and performed CPR. The woman survived. Marjorie looked at her, impressed. "You're not done healing people yet, Grace?" For the first time in months, Grace felt something inside her stir. Purpose. 6 months later, Grace received an unexpected envelope. Her hands trembled as she read the sender's name. Anna Madsen. Her breath caught. She expected it to be filled with anger or pain, but it wasn't. The letter read, "Grace, I lost my husband that night, and nothing can change that. But I've learned that forgiveness is the only way to stop the pain from spreading. You cannot undo what happened, but you can make sure it means something. Anna." Tears filled Grace's eyes as she pressed the letter to her chest. For the first time since the accident, she looked out through the prison window at the sunrise and whispered, "If she can forgive me, maybe I can try to forgive myself." From that day forward, Grace changed. She began working in the infirmary every day, helping other inmates, cleaning wounds, taking temperatures, and writing letters for those who couldn't. Her kindness spread quietly through the prison, even to those who once mocked her. Marjorie, the nurse, became her mentor. She told Grace, "The world still needs your hands, girl. Don't let one night define a lifetime." Grace nodded. "I want to make things right, even if I never leave this place." Over the next few years, Grace became known as the helper. Other inmates started trusting her. She taught a class on basic health and hygiene. She treated anyone who needed care without judgment. Every night, she wrote in her journal, "One day, I will bring light where I once caused darkness," say Captain's letter folded in her pocket, worn, faded, but always near her heart. After 3.5 years, Grace was released for good behavior. The same metal doors that had closed behind her opened again. She stepped out with only a small box of belongings, a worn Bible, her journal, and Anna's letter. Outside, the world felt brighter and frighteningly empty. She had nowhere to go, but for the first time, she wasn't afraid of starting over. Grace whispered to herself, "You're not the same person who walked in here. You never will be." As she walked down the road, the sunlight fell across her face, and for the first time in years, she smiled. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, but sometimes it opens a door to the future. Grace Turner's story doesn't end here, because some journeys, the ones that begin in the darkest places, lead to the brightest light. When Grace Turner walked out of prison after 3 long years, she thought the hardest part was over. But life was only just beginning to test her again. Forgiveness isn't the end of pain. It's the beginning of healing. Portland hadn't changed much, but Grace had. The same streets she once drove down freely now felt like memories she didn't deserve to revisit. She carried a small cardboard box, her entire life condensed into a few items. Some clothes, her journal, and one folded letter. The one from Anna Madsen that had kept her alive. She looked up at the cloudy sky and whispered to no one, "I'm free, but I don't know where to go." Grace rented a tiny room in an old building near downtown. No job, no friends, no savings. Every job application she filled out ended in rejection. "We appreciate your interest," they'd say, their voices tinged with pity. "But we can't hire someone with a criminal record." The words cut deeper every single time. One night, she sat alone by her window, watching the city lights blur through her quiet tears. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I don't deserve a second chance." But fate and a dose of simple kindness was about to find her. One afternoon, while walking aimlessly, Grace saw a sign outside a community shelter. "Volunteers needed. Help feed the homeless." She hesitated, her feet routed to the pavement. Then she took a breath and walked inside. The place was humming with life. People laughed, served steaming meals, and folded donated clothes. An older woman, Linda, greeted her with a warm, open smile. "First time volunteering?" she asked. Grace just nodded, her voice caught in her throat. Linda looked at her closely, noticing the deep exhaustion in her eyes. "Everyone starts somewhere," she said gently. "Come on, grab an apron." And just like that, for the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Grace began to feel human again. Grace started coming to the shelter every day. She cleaned floors, cooked meals, and served food. She never mentioned her past. She just worked quietly, offering a small smile to the people she helped. One evening, chaos erupted. A man collapsed near the serving line without a second thought. Grace rushed to his side. She checked his pulse, cleared his airway, and began CPR. Her training from years ago kicking in automatically. When the paramedics arrived, one of them looked around and said, "Whoever did this probably saved his life." Linda turned to Grace, her eyes filled with tears. "You really were meant to heal people." For the first time in years, Grace smiled without the crushing weight of guilt. A few months later, Grace met Miguel Alvarez, a social worker at the shelter. He was calm, kind, and burned with a quiet passion for helping others. One night, as they were packing up donated blankets, Miguel asked, "You've got steady hands. Were you a nurse?" Grace hesitated, the truth heavy on her tongue. She finally told him everything about the accident, the prison sentence, and the letter of forgiveness that had been her only lifeline. Miguel didn't look away. He didn't flinch. He just said softly, "We've all broken something, Grace. Some of us just spend the rest of our lives fixing it." From that day on, they worked side by side, building trust and building hope. Together, Grace and Miguel started a small initiative they called the Kind Hands Project. They set up pop-up medical tents for the homeless, offered free checkups, and taught basic health lessons right there on the streets. Grace's quiet compassion was magnetic. It drew people in. She never talked about her past. She simply let her actions speak for her. In time, others joined them, former inmates, single mothers, veterans, all people who had once been broken, now working together to help others heal. During a local news interview, Grace said, "If you've been through darkness, then you understand how precious light really is." One morning, Grace opened her email and froze. The sender's name made her heart stop dead in her chest. Anna Madsen. With trembling fingers, she clicked open the message. It read, "Dear Grace, I've followed your work from afar. You've turned pain into healing, and that's what Peter always did with his music. My children and I have started a foundation in his name, the Madsen Trust. We would like you to come to Denmark to tell your story." Grace stared at the screen in disbelief, her eyes filling with tears. "Why would they want me there?" she whispered. Miguel, who had been standing beside her, put a gentle hand on her shoulder and smiled. "Because they see what Peter's wife saw all those years ago, the goodness that survived." 4 days. Grace couldn't sleep. The thought of facing Peter's family again terrified her. What if they regretted forgiving her? What if the world judged her all over again? She finally told Miguel, "I can't go. I don't deserve it." Miguel looked at her firmly, his gaze unwavering. "Grace, redemption isn't earned by hiding from your past. It's earned by walking straight through it and showing others it can be survived." Grace closed her eyes, took a deep, shuddering breath, and whispered, "Then I'll go." A few weeks later, Grace stood at the airport, holding a passport for the first time in years. Her hands trembled, not from fear, but from the immense weight of everything that lay behind her. As she boarded the flight to Denmark, Miguel's words echoed in her mind. "You've already healed others, Grace. Now it's time to heal yourself." As the plane lifted through the clouds, she looked out the window at the world shrinking below and whispered, "Thank you, Anna, for believing in a stranger." Healing doesn't happen all at once. It happens one act of kindness, one forgiven moment, one brave step at a time. And sometimes, the person we save is the person we used to be. The air in Copenhagen was cold, clean, and quiet as Grace stepped out of the airport. She clutched the handle of her small suitcase, the plastic digging into her palm. Everything felt surreal. The early morning sun cast long, clean shadows across the streets, and the air carried the scent of coffee and sea salt. For a decade, she had dreamed of this moment 1,000 times, and in every single one of those dreams, she had turned around and fled back into the darkness she came from. But this time was different. This time, she didn't run through the crowd. She saw a young woman holding a simple sign. Grace Turner, the Madsen Trust. Her name was Sophie, Peter Madsen's daughter. Grace's breath caught in her throat. She froze, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs, so loud she could barely think, barely breathe. The world seemed to shrink to this one moment. Sophie saw her, and a gentle, understanding smile touched her lips. "Hi. You must be Grace." Grace opened her mouth, but the words wouldn't come. Her voice broke, choked with the guilt that had lived with her for 10 long years. I'm so sorry," she managed to whisper. Sophie just shook her head softly, her expression kind. "Please, not here. Let's go home." The Madsen home stood near the coast, a warm, wooden house that seemed to be built from sunlight itself. It was filled with framed photos, each one capturing a moment of laughter, a slice of life. Peter's presence, his joy, seemed to live in every corner. Standing in the doorway was Anna Madsen, now in her 50s. Her smile was calm, but her eyes, deep and knowing, shimmered with a universe of emotion. Grace stopped a few feet away, her throat tightening again. The words she'd rehearsed 1,000,000 times, vanishing. "Mrs. Madsen, I never thought." Before she could finish, Anna stepped forward, and wrapped her arms around her. There were no words, just the soft, shared sound of two broken hearts finding a strange, unexpected peace in each other's presence. After a long moment that felt like an eternity, Anna pulled back slightly and whispered, "Peter believed in second chances. I think now I understand why." Over the next few days, Grace stayed in a small, cozy guest room with a window overlooking the sea. She learned about the Madsen Trust, a foundation Peter's family had created in his name. It supported victims of reckless driving accidents, but also, incredibly, helped rehabilitate the offenders. It was a testament to the man she had never met, a man whose life she had irrevocably changed. Then Anna made a request that sent a jolt of terror through Grace. She invited her to speak at the Foundation's 10th anniversary event. "Your story," Anna said, her voice steady and certain, "has already changed lives. But I think it's time people hear it from you." Grace was terrified. She wasn't a speaker. She was a survivor of her own catastrophic mistakes, a ghost haunted by her past. How could she stand before anyone and speak? That night, alone in her room with the sound of the waves outside, she wrote in her journal, the same one she'd kept since her release. "If I hide my story, others will keep hiding theirs. Maybe the truth is how we save each other." It wasn't about her anymore. It was about Peter. It was about hope. The hall was filled with hundreds of people, families holding hands, survivors with scars both visible and hidden, students, and the press. Grace's hands trembled as she walked onto the stage, the bright lights feeling like a judgment. She looked out into the sea of faces, her heart threatening to beat its way out of her chest. And then she saw them, Anna and Sophie sitting in the front row, their faces a beacon of support. And next to them, having flown all the way from America, was Miguel, his steady presence a rock she could anchor to. She took a deep, shaky breath and stepped toward the microphone. "My name is Grace Turner," she began, her voice quiet but clear in the silent hall. "And I'm here because someone I never met chose to forgive me." For the next 20 minutes, she spoke. She spoke of the crushing weight of guilt, the lonely years in prison, and the letter from Anna Madsen that had pierced through her despair and saved her life. She spoke of compassion, of human connection, and the quiet, earth-shattering strength of forgiveness. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. As the applause rose, Anna stood and came to the stage, embracing her once again. "Peter would have been proud," she whispered, her words the greatest gift Grace had ever received. The next morning, Grace walked along the shore near the Madsen home. The sun was rising, painting the water in hues of gold and pink. In her hand, she carried a single white tulip from Anna's garden. She knelt by the water's edge, the cool sand seeping through her jeans. "Peter," she whispered to the wind and the waves, "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure your kindness lives on." She gently placed the flower on the water and watched as the current carried it away, a small white speck drifting toward the horizon, sunlight glimmering on its petals. For the first time in over a decade, she didn't feel the crushing weight of her past. She only felt peace. Before leaving Denmark, Grace found a sealed envelope on her nightstand. It was from Anna. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside, a simple note written by Anna. "Grace, you once said you couldn't forgive yourself, but forgiveness isn't something we earn. It's something we live. Go and live it fully. Anna." Grace smiled through her tears. She folded the letter and tucked it beside the first one, the letter that had once been her only lifeline. Now she had two. Back in Portland, Grace returned to the Kind Hands Project, but something had shifted. It was no longer just a small, local mission. Inspired by her speech, donations and messages of support poured in from all over the world. Volunteers joined, wanting to be part of this movement of compassion. Every year, on the anniversary of her release, Grace held a vigil. For the victims, for the survivors, and for the lost. Miguel stood beside her every single time, his quiet pride a constant source of strength. "You've changed so many lives," he told her one night, as they packed up after a vigil. Grace smiled, a soft, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "No," she said, "they changed mine." Years passed. The Kind Hands Project grew into a global network of compassion, funding hospitals, shelters, and rehabilitation centers. When people asked why she had dedicated her entire life to this work, her answer was always the same: because someone believed in the goodness that survived inside me, even when I couldn't see it myself. Her story was eventually featured in documentaries, taught in schools, and written about in books, not as a story of tragedy, but one of profound transformation. In her final speech before retirement, her hair now streaked with silver, Grace stood before a new generation of volunteers and leaders, her voice full of a wisdom earned through pain and grace. "We can't rewrite the past," she said, "but we can write what comes after, and that is where hope begins." Redemption isn't about forgetting, it's about remembering and choosing love anyway. Grace Turner's life is a powerful reminder that even in our darkest hours, even when we feel lost beyond repair, the light always finds a way back. Thank you so much for watching and sharing this time with us. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more stories of hope and transformation. Until next time, take care.